willing to listen while we go into deliberations, to fundamentally create a list of findings, which we will then use to make decisions. And once we're in deliberation, fundamentally, members of the audience can listen but should not interrupt. But if you feel that we have missed a point or that there's something important you want to add to our discussion, please raise your hand and we will then go out of deliberation, allow the comment, and put it as part of the record, and then continue with our deliberations. Gentlemen, is that acceptable to you all as a method of proceeding? Before going into deliberation, what I have done, Bobby.
We have some information that was requested at the last meeting.
Yes.
That I'm going to submit. I guess I should
Fine.
submit
Why
before
don't
you
you do that
go
right
in.
now then, Bobby? Thank you very much.
We've got to do minutes.
Thank you, Walter, yes. Well, Bobby, can we wait a moment?
We can.
My colleagues have reminded me of my typical failing on procedural matters.
Administrative duties.
Okay,
So we're going back into public hearing?
we are now in public hearing
Okay.
while Bobby comes forth and presents some additional information.
We were requested last meeting to address a couple of things. One is a sort of a phasing overview of the development, how it's going to unfold,
Yes,
its structure, and how it would proceed.
and some pro forma.
And a pro forma in terms of sort of pro forma or generic development costs in those phases. Also, more data on the market research study and absorption rates. So I have a letter from Doug Kennedy Advisors on that. We were also requested at the last hearing to, we had some questions on the workforce housing aspect of the development. And we took it to mean we needed a little more depth in developing that piece, how it fits in Lyme, in the surrounding community. To address that, we figured the, frankly, best way, instead of having a translator in the middle, namely me, was to have Stuart Arnett and Jonathan Edwards from the Arnett Group, who are specialists in workforce housing development. And so we brought them here tonight to hear the deliberations, but also to receive the questions directly from the board in terms of some of the requests that we got last meeting. And then they can respond to those, assuming we aren't finishing up tonight, which we don't think we will be.
Probably not.
They could respond to that before the next meeting.
The outline of potential findings runs to some 20 pages.
And there was some detailed questioning last time about how the workforce housing would work, how it would fit in line, how it fit with the current development. And so that is what Mr. Arnett and Mr. Edwards specialize in. So they are here. And again, to the extent the board has specific questions, I would suggest we stay or come out of public hearing in order to address them
Thank you.
to them.
Bobby?
Yeah.
Just so you know, this is, can I follow up on that before we
Please do, Bobby. Question
Um,
from Rob.
Why aren't you offering some testimony from that? I mean, you have the burden going forward. Why are you not offering some testimony?
We plan to, but what I wanted to do was have them here to hear the board's concerns, so the testimony would be germane to the questions that the board had.
Yeah, but I'm not following you. Why aren't you presenting more of your facts right now? If you want us to consider it, why aren't you putting more on
Yeah,
right now?
I agree with Rob. I prefer to see us, if they have some specific things to add to our sum total of knowledge, I prefer they do that now. And then if they find that as we move forward, there's other things to add, that's fine. We will be happy to go out of deliberation and talk with them.
They can certainly, I mean, again, it's a timing. We were here about 2 weeks ago when these questions came up. So bringing them on board and having a full analysis is a timing issue.
Yeah.
They certainly have some preliminary impressions from what they've been able to review to date, and can certainly offer some preliminary observations, if that would be helpful.
Well, the question, I think, will come up in deliberation, so I don't want to touch on it very much, is the weight workforce housing has on the decisions about variances. That may be a consideration down the road. But if there is something they can add right now, which would add to our ability to make decisions about the variances, the workforce housing is a fact.
Yes.
And perhaps, Rob, what do you think?
I'm just kind of mystified, because I'm kind of mystified what you were trying to offer to
Yeah,
us in the way of evidence.
that's
all.
what I am
That's all I
too.
want to know.
Right, and I guess what I was responding to were the questions that were raised at the last meeting that were specific to the workforce piece, which seemed to, and correct me if I'm wrong, seemed the board was looking for a little bit more development on that aspect of the proposal.
I think we asked about cost, I think we asked about phasing, and I'm not
Right.
sure that we had any other questions.
I think you asked about a review of what else was available in Lyme. Had we done some work on other projects in Lyme, other, right, and there were a couple of questions last time that I couldn't answer because we hadn't looked at it yet.
Okay.
So that's why we thought we'd find some folks who do that sort of review. It's outside of the scope of what Brian was doing and what our folks have been doing to date. They've been focused on our project, not on the greater Lyme community. And so the Arnett group, that's what they do, is focus on the greater Lyme community, or the greater community in which workforce housing takes place. So that's why they're here.
So you're not going to offer anything specific right now? Okay, fine.
There are certainly some impressions they could give, but they haven't gotten into the details for this meeting tonight.
It strikes me then that we're going to need to take testimony from them at a future meeting, once we get to that particular part of
Yeah,
the package. But
the fact is, we've been given another fairly large amount of information to digest.
yeah,
And we have, so let me, as a matter of public record, what has been done here? First, there's a number of people in the audience who don't know who we are.
yes.
So first, let's go around and introduce ourselves again.
I'm Dave Robbins, Planning and Zoning Administrator.
I'm Alan Greatorex, member of the board.
Michael Woodard, alternate.
Francis Bowles, Chair.
Rob Titus, member, vice chair.
Walter Swift, member of the board. Dan Moran, alternate.
Bill Malcolm, member. And at this point, we have a full board present, but as our custom, we ask our alternates to act and with questions and thoughts, but they do not have a vote because the full board is present. If any of the councils present have concerns about that, I'd like to know that now. Nope? No problems? Nope? Okay, good. Okay, what we have done, what has been done here, because this is a very, very complex project with a huge amount of information that the board needs to digest and weigh fairly. I have spent several days making based on what I know, and with some input from Mr. Titus, but only to me and to no one else with no discussion of any sort taking place, created a fundamental set of thoughts about findings of fact that provide the factual basis for making a decision on the variance requests that are before this board. And our proposal is now, first, to go through the summary of requested relief so that everyone is agreed on what it is we're supposed to be doing. And then to go through points with the board members in discussion, deliberation, to find out if they think that what has been written here is relevant, and to modify it. And then David would modify that and presented so that we have a body of fact that guides us when we eventually go into formal deliberation on both the variances, and if the variances pass, then on the special exceptions. I have noted some of the pieces of material that had been given to us at the end of this, and the board will guide me and us as a group in deciding how much of this to write down, or simply say, there's a lot of paper here that we have to deal with, and we'll try to keep it straight. Colleagues, does this make sense to you?
I'd like a recess for about a half an hour so I can read through all the new stuff we've just been handed. I don't feel ready to discuss anything until I've seen it.
Fine. I think that's an entirely reasonable request. Gentlemen, how do you feel about that?
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Recommended to 15 minutes.
Go 20? Do I hear you?
Can you read it?
I just did, so I don't think you're gonna have that much trouble.
Okay, I'll start with 15.
15, I hear 15, 15,
I'll
down
raise you
15.
15 later if I can't get through it. I only have half the number of eyes you do.
Okay, folks, what we're doing now is we're on pause while we begin to try and digest some of this stuff.
First question for me is, I've got a sheet of paper here that says page 1 of 6 findings. Who did it?
Just a second. That's
That's his job.
That's yours.
That's his job.
yeah.
And we've got another stack of stuff from
Everybody,
somebody,
Varying people.
varying people, sir.
but it's all labeled.
Yes, it is.
The table of contents and everything.
We're going to proceed. At this point, unless there is another brief comments from the public, and I suspect I see Councilor Hans over there. Please proceed, ma'am.
If we used our 15 minutes wisely, and we have our, Mr. Arnett is willing to give a brief overview of some points that the board would like you to consider.
Okay, but
Brief.
brief.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Anywhere?
have a chair, have a seat,
Or stand.
or stand.
Good evening. My name is Stu Arnett, and I am the managing member of Arnett Development Group LLC in Concord. We provide land use planning and community development services to community and community-based projects. And with me today is my colleague Jonathan Edwards, who is here to answer any more questions in more depth. I come out of the Regional Planning Commission world, city planning. Jonathan was a town planner in an adjacent community here for a long time. And we've been recently working with a couple of communities on workforce housing issues. So we've been on the town side recently, just recently asked to perhaps give some initial thoughts here. In order to be as minimalist but complete as I can, let me tell you, I think we have 5 thoughts from looking at this for the last few days, going through as much documentation as we can find quickly. One, clearly workforce housing is important in the zoning ordinance in that it's specifically laid out in Article 11. It's right in the front, it says how important it is to the town.
Excuse me, the Article 11 is affordable housing,
Right.
which requires a nonprofit entity to hold it.
I think that
But he's equivalent, you're making equivalent of that.
I think
Yeah.
the issue of having housing that is affordable and diverse is important.
Yes, that's
Okay.
important.
Second is it is reading both the past and the current town master plans, those same statements come up frequently. The importance of diversity of housing and the importance of having housing that's affordable to different income groups here in the town to keep the town stable. The third thing is that we've recently seen that there is a letter from the Regional Planning Commission that we would agree with 100% that says the request for the variance is consistent with the regional plan, and is, if I think I get the quote right, it would help the region deal with a regional need of a lack of affordable workforce housing. The fourth point we would make is we have seen towns, including I believe this one, who look at the percentage of existing housing as a determining factor. That's interesting and it might be important, but it is not what the law requires. The law requires the opportunity of housing going forward. So there is no passing grade as far as percent of total. So it's tomorrow you're concerned with, not today. And the last thing is, again, looking at the performance very quickly, but it's pretty obvious, is that without the variance, that the workforce element from this project is eliminated. So those are our quick, brief findings.
Hi, thank you.
One question. Sure. Have you ever done any consulting for either Cobb Hill or the Peterborough Co-housing Project?
We have not. Any other questions?
No?
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be here if you want to break after that.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to go into deliberation so that we can have preliminary comments from the board members to each other. So, all in favor? Aye, okay. I think we may want to review that letter from the Regional Planning Commission. That's not quite what I remember it saying. But that may be...
We'll get to it.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, I think we should.
Yes. So fundamentally, I think we need to understand what we built.
I know you laid out an earlier draft of
Yeah.
an outline and then
Yes.
supplemented that tonight with page
Yeah.
26. As I look through it, I don't see that the items, there's no indication of which one of the 5 criteria the item falls under.
I deliberately did not do that because I felt that that was a matter for the board's deliberation.
Well, so I wasn't faulting.
No, I knew you weren't, but no, that's the
But-
strategy there.
But our ultimate decision for the variance has to address each of the 5 criteria.
Yes.
I assume we plan not to go sequentially until we come to a no and then stop.
My belief is that we must, for each one of the variances,
Address each
vote
one.
all 5,
Okay.
and then have a final vote.
All right. So
On
that's my
that.
assumption,
Yeah.
the way I'm directing my question.
Yeah.
So as the first order of business, should we organize the information into those 5 categories? I realize some may fall into more than one, but I'm gonna find it difficult with the amount of stuff that's in front of
It's a
me.
very, very good point. I
To
agree
know
with you
when
completely.
I'm looking at a particular criteria, what information we have. And I'm also quite certain that a lot of the information we have is irrelevant under any of the criteria.
I believe you're entirely correct.
So I don't wanna waste a lot of time looking at stuff and deciding
We don't need it.
whether it's a fact or
No.
not, because it likely won't bear on our decision.
Could not agree more wholeheartedly.
So those are just some
Yeah,
thoughts that I have.
absolutely.
looking
No.
for you.
I mean, much of the information we have is not central to the 5 things we have to decide.
It's interesting.
It's interesting, and it involves large elements of moral suasion, but,
And a tremendous amount of work.
and an incredible amount of work.
Right, so I don't wanna gloss over stuff, and I don't wanna prejudge what is or isn't relevant. I'm just,
No,
my impression is that a lot of it is not directly on point.
I basically tried to put out everything that was,
I don't disagree with you on that point. What I might disagree with is that I suspect this case is headed to litigation afterwards.
absolutely.
And I would love to have the facts noted that what you heard and what we found. That's the reason for a lot of the.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but do we have to pick up every piece of paper and decide whether it's relevant or not?
No.
That's-
No, the idea was to try and marshal, and enough more stuff has come in, so there'll be additions to this. I just wanted to try and give us some sort of outline,
Oh, yeah.
which is attackable, so that we wouldn't be going, my God, where is this, throughout the whole thing, that's all. I'm under no illusions about the coherence or relevance of all of the pros here. So what I'd like to do first, though, and this is a point at which hands can shoot up from the audience, is I'd like to make sure that we're on the right page with the requested relief. Sir?
When you say audience, Are you including only the people at the table, or?
No, I think I'm in.
audience?
Do you need to come out?
But my feeling is let's try and get where we are first, and then if other people feel that they wish to raise their hand, they could be
Okay,
recognized.
that's what I,
Yeah,
that's
no,
what I
the
want
idea is
clarification
that
on.
to the greatest possible degree, the decision is to be, the discussion is to be interminable, but I don't want to have anyone feel they're excluded if they have critical information for us.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sir?
So we have 5 elements or 5 criteria that we can focus on,
Yes.
and we can discuss 16 paragraphs that relate to, let's say, element 1,
Mm-hmm.
without interruption. And when we finished our deliberation on that particular topic, and we then, I guess what I'm saying is, does it make sense to then access any public comment?
For each section.
And as each of the 5 criteria are
Okay.
summarized and concluded, when we finished our deliberation on each one, ask the public if anybody has input,
Fine. That's
and not get interrupted while we're trying to do our job.
fine, Walter. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so. I have here somewhere, I'm going to try and find it.
The request for relief,
Yeah, that basically is, summary of requested relief is there. Rob, while I'm looking for some paper, could you take that and see if everyone thinks that that is what we're actually doing? Yes, here we are.
This is documentation.
No, this is something slightly different. This is from the handbook for zoning boards.
All right.
And what this is a worksheet
Yeah,
to remind us what each of the 5 criteria are as we go into the discussion. More copies of this can be made very quickly. I just thought that would be useful. Does that seem reasonable to you, Rob? So we have it in front of us.
well, then, can I suggest
Please.
what I thought I heard at the last meeting as the requested relief? I've condensed it into something that I could understand.
Fine.
The applicant's requesting a variance against a disallowed use in the rural district, as stated in table 4.1. To allow a planned development in the rural district, specifically a 36-unit condominium as described in the drawings and documentation submitted with the application. I believe that's the primary application of this. And I'm gonna, I think we should defer discussion on the ancillary stuff until we get through that one, like the special exceptions.
Yes.
yeah, we
agreed.
definitely.
Totally.
So that's my take on the definition of the variance they requested. And now, we go to the sections of criteria.
And do you want to address the second variance requested or leave that to later
I
on?
think what I heard was that was the primary, we had requested they pick one,
And that was the one that.
And they picked one.
The bodies.
and I don't see any need to address the next one.
Right,
Unless
because-
after we finish with this one, they come back and say, oh, well, we want the other one too.
Mhm.
So we go
Right,
back.
actually, there's, I think, please correct me if I just made a mistake here. That 4.1 also requires a variance from section 5.14 for building footprint.
I suspect that's true.
You can't do A without B.
Oh, is that true?
Basically, if I understand the application correctly, it is not a lot averaging application, they stated that.
Right.
And what it is they would like us to create one large lot and allow the area occupied by buildings on that lot to be in excess of the area allowed by the zoning ordinance.
For all-
which
For
is-
the large one,
for the
I
large
thought-
lot for
And I
5
thought it
points.
was an application for a planned development.
Well, the thing is that a plan development, the question also becomes whether a plan development also in theory may include retail, may. But the word plan development has been used on a number of occasions, or at least inferred
Yeah.
during the discussions. So I think we're correct there, Walter. That's really what's being asked for. This is a for-profit condominium development in the rural zone.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And that's not allowed in the rural zone because of plan, it would fall on, if it were in another zone where plan developments were allowed,
That's
it
what
would
it
fall
would
under the criteria of a plan development.
That's correct.
All right, so they're asking for a variance from the limitation in the ordinance that doesn't permit a plan development in the rural zone.
Yeah.
I didn't go further than that in terms of my thinking about whether it meant variance criteria
Okay.
as to sizes or anything
Yeah.
else. Because plan development, all sizes in a plan development are set by the planning board.
Right, and there's still limitations in the planning board's definitions of these things to, I think, more than 6 units per building.
That's different than a plan development.
No, I
Is it?
think it is actually in the plan development.
Bring plan development statute.
4.49.
4.49?
Yeah. No more than 6 units per
Per
building.
building, yes, it is,
Yes,
it is.
it's,
Yeah.
section B in the 4.49.
Yeah,
So do we have to include that in the application review?
I would think so.
I would think
I
so.
think it's just plan development.
Right, but the moment we see they want to have 2 units in this development with more than 6 units.
6 units.
And the
But
twice.
but what they want is a plan development.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
So if we say
yea or nay.
yea or nay on just the issue of plan development,
Regardless of the number of units.
we can go further to other issues that may be like 6 units or 25,000 square
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah,
right.
okay, yeah. But you're basically saying you find the basic fact
Mhm.
and then go from there.
I think so. But I guess,
No, this is why,
Yeah.
this is why it's important to have this input, because it's too easy with all the information we've gotten here to get caught down in the middle of this thing.
Or get into weeds.
You get, that's exactly it, yeah. No, you're right, Walter.
so,
Rob, does that make sense to you?
I want to hear the rest of the discussion, yeah, go ahead.
I'm finished with the discussion. I was gonna say, if we agree that we can limit the application for a variance to the fact, the finding of fact is that they have requested relief under table 4.1 to allow a planned development in the rural district. If we can agree on that as a committee, then we could open a public hearing and see if there's any misunderstanding about what they're asking for.
Under that specific.
My only issue with that is that I think we need to address whatever they've asked for, notwithstanding that they've said that one of the first request is to be able to have multi-family housing. They also have asked about the conversion petition, and I think we have to address that as well, notwithstanding that it's an alternative provision. I'd just like to.
Then maybe we go through them one and then.
Doesn't matter, as long as we do both.
Yeah,
I agree, Walter, I think separate, I don't vote on this, but I
fine with me. Do one and then do the other.
That works.
So, in theory, somewhere before us, we have the data we need to make it, actually to go ahead and make the finding.
The finding is that that at least one variance request is to
Multifamily.
give relief against a multifamily dwelling in the rural district
Right.
Yeah.
and not call it a planned development. What's in the zoning ordinance? Is there a multifamily dwelling? or multi-dwelling family?
There's a multi-dwelling conversion.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not, that's not what we're talking about.
It's
I know.
not, it is not defined.
So I want to be specific about what section of table 4.1 they're asking relief from. And I believe the first one is planned development.
This is a business. So it falls into business. Because it is a for-profit condominium development. And it falls under business, and therefore planned development, rural district, no.
Right. I don't know what else it would be listed as here.
Well, the thing is, I think there's been some hope that it would be viewed as a residential multi-dwelling conversion, but that's not the formal business organization. Is that right in your view, Rob?
No, what I'm saying is do them two separately.
Sure.
What, I don't know that it matters an awful lot how we classify it, as long as we address what they've asked for. And I don't mind calling it a planned unit development, I don't mind calling it multifamily dwelling, and I don't mind talking about conversion. But I think we need to address what they have asked for, so that they know, we know what we're doing.
Okay?
And Rob, you're saying they asked for, in essence, both, is what you just said?
Yeah, they have not anywhere used the language planned unit development.
I agree.
Well,
Even though I think I agree with you, it
I
functionally.
mean, it's the only thing that it falls under. Yeah.
Well, I think what, if I heard the answer to my question last time correctly, they want us to consider multifamily conversion simultaneously and waive both provisions. Waive the 5-year waiting period for the conversion
And
and
the
treat it
6-year.
as if it was already granted, and therefore you could look at the multifamily.
And the 6 years.
Yeah, exactly. That was, because that question was not academic.
No, we would
And
not.
I'm not sure that I still, we have a recording, I guess we could go back and listen to what the answer was, but I'm not sure that it satisfied the ordinance. In the sense that you need both, one without the other.
Doesn't
You
work.
don't have an application.
Right.
Which is basically what Rob was.
Yeah,
So, I'd rather go the other way.
Which
Not
is?
look at the planned development, but look at the simultaneity of their variance request.
Which would be both.
The conversion and.
Both.
And the multifamily rental.
so then we also deal then with the whole question of section 5.14, because the building footprint then begins to exceed
Yes.
rather significantly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have to add the third leg of the triangle too.
Right.
So where is it, what are the two that you want to consider?
Well, if I understood correctly, you can't have multifamily unless you convert it after it's been something else for 5 years.
So a multi-dwelling conversion.
Right.
That is,
Right.
that is a listed use in the table.
Right.
Right, but you
Right,
can't
but-
convert, but you can't convert it till it's been something else for
5 years old.
Right.
Because
They were asking to waive essentially that provision, or to grant a variance in that provision in order to get back to the multifamily.
to allow them to build out.
Right.
And we were given testimony earlier that this provision was intended to be used for older houses in Lyme. But the wording of the provision does not limit it in that way.
No, it just says 5 years.
So while we might agree completely that the provision was intended for something, that's not what the language says.
Well, any house that's older than 5 years would qualify.
Exactly, yeah, and that's,
Whether it was an antique or not.
right,
Yeah.
So it
Right.
doesn't say 100 years before.
It
says
doesn't.
5 years.
it says 5 years, yeah. Though,
Well,
The advantage of multi-dwelling conversion is that it is allowed in rural districts.
yes. But we still nevertheless have before us the fact that this is a business.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is a condominium development organized as a business.
Yeah, right.
And included in this are, from everything I've been able to read, elements of food service. because of the common house and common eating facilities. And the question is, since restaurants are technically not allowed in the rural zone, how does that all play out?
Do we have a definition of that?
No, I don't believe we do.
That's a good question.
I think, I don't know, but I think a stretch for what they're talking about, for the applicant's proposal, a restaurant would be a stretch.
Yeah,
I think,
We do have
What's-
it.
what's unique here is it's co-housing.
Yeah,
correct.
And if we're in co-housing, you have sharing of facilities for meals, et cetera. So I
It
don't- I
doesn't
don't
say
think
that you're charging for meals to outsiders, so.
no, that's true. It would be within that, so we can drop that.
Do you want to throw in the criteria that this must be a co-housing development in order to be considered as part of the variance request?
Does
Yes.
that limit the workforce?
Why would I want to do that?
Well,
that's
if
my
it isn't
concern.
co-housing, it's just condos, then the food service becomes something different.
Well, it's not unusual in a condo project to have a common building.
Congregate eating.
Right, whether it's co-housing or not, I don't think that's, I mean, a lot of large condo projects, whether they're detached or attached condo buildings, the condominium form ownership provides for common facilities,
Mhm.
whether it's a clubhouse, a ski facility, or so I don't see that just because we call it a condo means you can't have a kitchen someplace.
No, I agree with that.
But I'm not sure whether.
The other question is though, from the standpoint of the workforce and fundamentally co-housing is what we fall under the general rubric of intentional community. And among the things that we've been told is that members of the intentional community are expected to contribute to and work for aspects of the common goals of the community. And the question is that compatible with workforce housing?
Well, I have no idea how you enforce it anyway. This is
Yeah.
town, so
Exactly.
And I
I
don't
think
think
we're
it's-
gonna have to roll
And I don't
back.
think it's been defined.
No.
And we aren't gonna set up those rules.
If this is a social experiment, that's fine, but it doesn't fall under, I can't find any place in the ordinance.
It doesn't, that's not referred to.
So in the alternative, I think what you're suggesting, it's a commercial
Condominium property.
condominium development.
Right, that's the only place I can put it, because we don't, I don't think, have a good reason to deal with co-housing as the organization of it.
I don't know that it matters.
I mean, basically, a bunch of people want to go and build a bunch of structures on the landscape of a certain scale, and our decision is, does the Lyme zoning allow that type of scale in that place? And then, the organization of it is, frankly, it might be up to them.
I mean, if this was
I agree.
a commercial venture that's being built on spec, or whether you pre-sold all the units and it's not built on spec, if we're worried about financial viability, we can address that, I guess, under one of our criteria, but I don't know that that's the central issue yet. Under any of the 5 criteria, is the financing, what the
Organization.
the organization,
I agree.
whether people are forced to cook dinner for their friends or not. I mean, all of that is,
Irrelevant.
I think, outside the scope
I agree
of
with
the
you.
criteria,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. That's why I referred to some excellent arguments of moral suasion. But
So in the minutes, what we heard the applicant say is, she turned to a summary of her proposal for a variance, noting that the board had asked her to propose one route. This will be a variance to the single dwelling use provision. Not multifamily, just single dwelling use provision. For the subsidiary variance for lot coverage.
which is,
So that's what she said at the last meeting. And your suggestion is to extend that to include the multifamily conversion or multi-dwelling conversion. I'm trying to tie it into real language in our ordinance.
Yeah.
yes.
I just personally have an issue with making an applicant choose. I would as soon make an answer, give them an answer on both.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure
That's all.
that the
That's
two that we identified
Yeah,
are
I
something
agree, I
that
agree.
That relates to the
that
zone.
relate to the zoning ordinance. And that's why I started out with the plan development, because it's the closest thing I could think of. But if we want to use her words and say that the variance is for the single dwelling use provision and extend it to multi-dwelling, then I think that's reasonable too.
I mean, to be viable, from what they've told us, they want to build multiple structures as the first phase connected to a common house. And one of them has 7 units in it, and one of them has 11 units in it.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line for the first phase.
Yep.
And the question then becomes, under what combination of variances would one ask to do that? And then, what does the ordinance tell us, and the will of the town and other data we have about whether that's an allowable variance? Yeah, Mike, there is also in point 3 there.
Yeah. Yep, got it.
That's what I was trying to do, is to
Yeah, yeah, site,
find the places where that stuff exists.
Relative to what we were just talking about, what you specifically said, the phase 1 is what?
You want to build, my understanding of phase 1 is the 6-unit,
7 units.
7-unit crest, the common building, and sorry, I think I may got this backwards. One's an 11-unit, one's a 7-unit, and the other is the common building connecting them together up on the bluff
Yeah, right.
on the site there.
What
And then the A building, B building, C building, and D building would be built in later phases.
Right.
And in the first phase, they would have stated that they plan to install 2 sections of workforce housing.
Okay.
And my
Yeah,
memory
right.
of the comment from the Regional Planning Commission was that this is good and virtuous and very minimal effect. I think the words minimal,
think that's correct.
the words minimal, I believe, are in that letter, yeah.
Are we being asked to vote on a request that includes only phase 1?
No,
No.
they're not.
No, the entire package ultimately. But
No, that's correct.
Could we, wait, could we?
Just because you
No,
were
it's a
making a
question, I know,
distinction, I wondered if you were heading in the direction
I wasn't actually
Okay,
voting on it,
okay.
no.
of, okay.
I
The,
mean,
the only reason I asked about that is that I had looked at this afternoon, and the phase 1 in the February presentation to us said the common house plus 11 unit wing plus 5-plex. 16, had a count of 16
Right.
units, so.
That's correct.
That's correct.
That's correct.
And what I was gonna say was, has there been a change to that proposal since?
Okay, I could be mistaken on that.
Since the February
Right.
presentation that they gave to us. And I don't remember one, so that was the.
Okay, I could be in error on that.
No, I think there was one building that had 7 and we lumped it. I think that was the issue.
There is, that,
Yes.
there's a
Second
7-unit in phase
Yeah.
2.
Gotcha. No, that's a mistake.
We may have,
Cross.
crossed things. However,
Okay, so going back to her, the applicant's original proposal and request. The terms that were used are, the application for variance. A use variance is requested from zoning ordinance table 4.1 to permit co-housing development. in the rural district.
Right.
Alternatively, or in addition or something, a variance is requested from section 446 imposing a wait period of 5 years before converting each of 6 buildings allowed by site plan review of lot size average subdivision into 6 residential units per building. And from 446G to permit reconfiguration of the 6 units per building into 2 buildings exceeding 6 units and 4 buildings with less than, on and on, 6 units. In addition, a variance is requested from section 514 to permit buildings larger than 7,000, I assume, square feet. Only connecting covered bridges for access are considered part of the adjacent buildings.
See, my
Well,
problem,
if you're proposing that's what we use, that would be good.
the
I don't see
problem,
what else we can use,
Good.
because,
Okay.
my problem with this is that, from a construction standpoint, I don't understand, if you're building this, why you wouldn't be building that? Where's the 5-plex?
I don't know, but the application for the variance has to do with a co-housing development, which currently is not permitted in the rural district, and,
It's not defined.
right, and things that aren't listed in the table 4.1 are not permitted.
That's correct.
And if it's not listed in table 4.1, it's not permitted, so
That's
they're
correct.
asking for a variance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Right,
Yeah.
That sounds right.
okay. So, then I propose, if we can vote on it, as a finding of fact. Did you ever get a copy of the original?
I have all the binders here.
Yes, I gave them a map.
Okay,
They're right by the coffee pot.
okay. The use variance is requested, so I propose that the variance, that we recognize that the variance that's being requested is one that is relief from zoning ordinance table 4.1 to permit co-housing development in the rural district. Additionally, instead of alternatively, a variance is requested, or alternatively.
What would you like? Walter?
Which way, where are
See,
you going with
the
that?
reason-
I'm reading what they requested.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Read
So
away.
alternatively,
Right.
a variance is requested from 446 imposing a wait period of 5 years before converting each of 6 buildings. I believe in general terms, it's waiting 5 years to convert for multi,
Yeah,
Multi-unit
Yeah.
conversion, multi-dwelling units.
but even if you wait 5 years, they still don't get to
But-
11 units.
yeah, but those are details. They're asking for they're asking for a variance from a use, for a use that they want to do that is not listed in table 4.1.
Mhm.
And they're asking for a variance to waive the 5-year requirement on a multi-dwelling conversion.
Does the use of the, using the term co-housing imply multi-units?
I don't know. It's not defined anywhere, so
Right,
it doesn't matter.
I think of the whole co-housing thing as a bit of a tar baby, which is why the words I use was on multifamily construction in the rural zone.
Right, gotcha, that's what you mean.
Because
So
we
you-
then end up, because anything we,
But they haven't said they want a variance for multifamily housing.
yeah, but they're asking for variance for something we have no definition of.
Co-housing.
Correct. We have a lot of discussion of what it is.
We have a lot of discussion, but the only way I think we could legitimately,
But they've said it's a condominium, so
yeah, I
maybe we
mean,
change the word to, they're asking for a variance to permit a condominium.
So we don't have that term in our ordinance, do we?
No,
no,
it's not permitted,
it's not permitted.
the same way co-housing is.
That's the essence of this whole business.
Yeah.
But neither one tell us what the buildings are gonna look like, whether they're attached, detached,
Right.
multifamily, single
Yeah.
family. Neither of those terms does anything to describe the specific proposal that's on the map.
That is correct.
So, I mean, why don't we refer to the map as being what they're proposing and not worry about what,
The name.
I don't know how
Yeah,
else we
that,
can.
to my mind, the basic proposal says we want to build a condominium. Because we're wanting to build a total of 7 structures, 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 structures, of 2 of which are multiple units connected to a common house, and 4 of which
Freestanding.
are freestanding, but with particular permission to build them as what they're really designed to be, would be within the bounds of the ordinance anyway.
Accessory buildings.
Except
Yeah.
they're not only accessory buildings, but they don't have more units than is allowed by conversion or in a
Yeah.
planned unit. The 2 that strike me as the ones that,
The 2 big ones.
the 2 big ones.
But what Bill is throwing out right here is saying, really the proposal is to build X number of 7 buildings, multi-units, whatever, on the site. Is that,
That's right.
without encapsulating condominium or whatever? The ownership is irrelevant.
I think so.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
They could be apartments, I don't.
They could be.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we don't, condominium is a legal form of ownership. Co-housing, I have no idea what that means legally. Apartments, we could know what that means.
Yes.
But we're not being asked to bear witness
Prove their
to
legal ownership.
either the form of ownership or how much is attached or
Right.
detached.
We're being asked to approve the construction of a large number of multifamily dwellings, at least 2 of which are linked and are of multiple units in the rural zone.
Right, yeah, so I think if we try to stick with defining what's on the map, as what's on the map, rather than applying.
And that's a multi-unit, not multi-family. They didn't ask for
Multi-unit.
They didn't ask for multi-family either, actually.
It's multi-unit.
And our zoning regulation doesn't say multi-family, it says unit.
Yep, that's
Or a
correct.
dwelling.
I would go
Yeah.
back to what Walter was saying, stick with as much as we can, what's in the zone.
And then how do we take and go with what you are saying, Rob, is this in conformance with what they have asked for?
If we use their language, it certainly is. I mean, the record is a record, and all the data and all the papers and the evidence is gonna be here for everybody to know exactly what we're talking about,
So
so.
you're
Let's
saying-
just get it described in the
So
movie.
as you as an attorney, you're not concerned as much about the exact word of how we describe the entity?
No, I'm happy to use their wording.
Okay.
Good. It's okay with me.
All right.
Could I ask you, I know this is, could I ask you to read it one more time?
Yep.
Oh, please do.
You don't want me to editorialize it or skinny it down.
Pontificate would be
Okay.
good one.
No?
We can eliminate the parts we don't like.
No.
A use variance is requested from zoning ordinance table 4.1 to permit co-housing development in rural district. Alternatively, a variance is requested from section 446, imposing a wait period of 5 years before converting each of 6 buildings, parentheses, allowed by site plan review of lot size average subdivision, close parentheses, into 6 residential units per building, and variance requested from section 4.46G to permit reconfiguration of the 6 units per building into 2 buildings exceeding 6 units and 4 buildings with less than 6 units. In addition, a variance is requested from section 5.14 to permit buildings larger than 7,000 only if connecting covered bridges for access are considered part of the adjacent buildings. That was the original request for variance. He can have it.
No, I'm sure it's in the file here, I just want, that's the one you asked, you made a motion, that would be, if I understood, you wanted to move, that would be the basis for our hearing, our
No,
deliberation.
technically,
Yeah,
technically speaking,
Yep.
use variances don't exist anymore. If I've understood what everyone is arguing. It's just a variance.
it says a use variance,
I
so
know,
that's the
but
words
that's-
they use.
Yeah, but that's the older form of variance before all these decisions that were made to clarify, unquote, the way the variance statute is listed. Because you don't have a use and area variance anymore, technically speaking, I believe.
RSA sisters applies. for use as well as
Yes,
dimensional.
that's correct. It's one
Or
variance.
through that out.
Yep.
Yep.
Legislature.
Yep.
So, and
Anyway, that's the, I move that that's the variance
second,
request.
I'll second that.
So do we then go out of deliberation and ask counsel for Pinnacle Project, whether that is what they think they're asking for?
It's their language, let's keep going.
They've made several revisions to that.
Yes, they have, that's why,
They can always ask questions.
Okay.
We need to get
Somewhere.
facts, we need to get somewhere further.
okay, so if we think we know what we're doing,
Editorially,
comrade. Again, this is not sacred prose in any way, shape, or form, it's just something for you all to comment on and tear apart as needed. So, in evaluating this, there's a relevant section of the rural district, is point one.
Yeah.
Is that considered by one and all reasonably worded and relevant to what we're doing?
I haven't read it yet.
Do you want me to read that out loud?
yep,
What, this?
Yeah, yeah, because that would be fair to the audience.
yeah, go.
Citation of relevant sections of the ordinance, Ray, rural district.
I need to interrupt for a second.
Sir.
There was a motion and a second, we need a vote on that.
On what
What
are
we're
our
various-
various?
I
yes.
didn't realize that was a motion.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's seconded by Bill.
I thought, I
And
asked,
Rob,
that
actually.
that was one of
Okay.
his motion,
We-
that's why I asked him to read it again, so I said, I second.
Okay, we got the motion made,
It was
seconded, all in favor? You can't vote.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Passed by all, unanimously passed.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, now, moving to findings. And again, there's no particular order to this. Citation of relevant sections of the ordinance for a rural district. Quote, "The rural objectives of the rural district are to protect the existing pattern of rural land uses in the town, to maintain and foster traditional agricultural pursuits, to encourage the most appropriate use of land, and to facilitate the adequate provision of community services. Less intensive land uses are permitted in the rural district to ensure that uses complement each other and are consistent with the existing character of the district, and to minimize demands placed on town services."
Excuse me, and Frank, what that came from, that's direct.
That's
ordinance.
323.
Back in.
323.
Three point two
It's
three.
just asking for the.
No, thank you very much, that's 3.23.
Yep,
3.23, sorry, I should have put that in there.
that's it.
Okay, citation of relevant sections of the master plan, pages 1-7 and 1-8. Maintenance of Lyme's rural character. Preservation of Lyme's rural character is dependent on successfully integrating new development into the fabric of the community. Open spaces should not be turned into housing developments or industrial commercial complexes. Vistas from roads and public places should be protected. The rate of development should be paced so that people still know and care about their neighbors. Development should only occur in areas with adequate supporting infrastructure and should be in harmony with the character of the existing neighborhood. That's, and
Section
then,
number?
that's pages 1-7 and 1-8.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it's,
master plan.
Yeah, it's,
And then
Yeah.
3 was master plan, page 1-9. New multifamily buildings are not favored. Conversion of existing large buildings to dwelling units and single-family homes is the preferred form of residential development. Single-family homes and the conversion of existing large buildings have been favored by residents of the town. Condominiums, co-ops, and new apartment buildings were opposed. Ensuring a mix of families by accommodating housing for people of all incomes is a concern shared by many residents.
So when you refer to that particular paragraph, you're talking about the results of the townwide survey.
That's correct, sir. I'm simply quoting what's in the master plan.
Yep.
Since we are told in the handbook here that we should consider both the zoning ordinance and the underlying thrust of the master plan for it.
And my take on that state document that
Yeah,
are referring to, OEP.
yeah,
And that, thing says that, we should consider the master plan, and the recommendations in it are the thing that in the master plan are the thing that I think is most important to our considerations here. The paragraph is a nice generic description of what we got from these community-wide surveys, synthesized into one paragraph. But then they go and make recommendations in each of the chapters as to what they should do to the zoning ordinance in the future. And that is where I think we would be well advised to take a look at what their recommendations are and see whether this proposal is in contrast to what they're recommending, or is a facet of what they are recommending.
I'd like to make one slightly different view,
Okay.
and that is I view the master plan as something that reflects the best efforts of the committee
Yeah.
to synthesize community sense and input. Whereas the zoning ordinance is a document that is voted on by the town.
Right.
It's supposed to reflect the best wishes of the town. It's voted on by the town, it's amended by the town, and
Correct.
reaffirmed once a year, depending on the change in the circumstances in the town. So although I like the idea of paying attention to the master plan, I lean a bit more heavily, it provides underlying sentiment, but I like much more
Oh, I'm not.
the rigor of the zoning.
Yeah.
ordinance.
absolutely.
I'm not saying to ignore the zoning ordinance, but what I'm saying is that there may be recommendations that can be interpreted in here, in the master plan, as being in favor or against
Right.
the proposal in
But
front of us.
from our standpoint, our decision basically ended up being based on the zoning ordinance.
Bill Hamilton
I
told
think,
me all
yeah,
that.
I think where we're supposed to look back at the zone, at the master plan, is where there's ambiguity
Yeah.
or issues are not addressed with any degree of finality in the zoning
Right.
ordinance. That's when we look back to see the genesis.
Right.
Supposedly, the zoning ordinance it gets its legitimacy from the master plan,
Yeah.
not the other way around.
Right.
So, and it was already described, that
Yeah.
the master plan's a committee project. This was both, the zoning ordinance was voted on by the town. So I'd have to give overwhelming weight to the ordinance
Yeah.
and only look back at the master plan, where we have some degree of confusion about what the language means or what the intent is.
Okay. Okay, so given that, so these are currently sitting here saying, do you all agree with having this as part of our record or not? What I've written out there.
Sure.
Okay,
So
good.
far, yeah.
So far.
Okay, so then point 4 is planned unit developments. The proposed project, a condominium development, resembles a planned unit development but lacks the commercial component noted in the planned unit development definition of the ordinance. Lyme Lodge has a grandfathered hospitality business that would be adjacent to the condominium development. As I brought this up earlier, specified in table 4.1 of the ordinance, planned unit developments and restaurants are not permitted in the rural zone. And you may not want to link those two.
Get rid of the word unit every place you used it. There's no such thing as a planned unit development in the ordinance. It's planned development. That's the definition and the term used in the.
I thought it was.
And I think proposed project, you said, when we talked about it earlier, a condominium, and I agree with Walter, there's no planned unit development either.
It just says
It
planned
shows up.
development.
You're correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd strike both of those areas back. It is proposed development.
A planned development
Yes.
that lacks the commercial component noted in the planned development definition of the ordinance.
Right.
And the question is, do you want that thing about the hospitality business in there at all?
No, I don't.
No, okay, cross that out.
I don't think that's pertinent.
I don't think so
I think
either.
based on the vote we just took,
But I
plan
would like,
development's not relevant to our
Right.
description.
I'd like to add though that planned developments are permitted in the commercial
Yeah,
and
they are, yeah.
Lyme Common District.
Yeah.
Right, but
Well, the interesting thing, Bill, is that on several of the documents we've been given, they're basically references to planned development, says, if only, it's really right next door, so it would be good if you let this be there,
Adjacent.
adjacent.
I understand. I
So,
understood the geography part, but since we already took a vote a minute ago that this is not a planned development, I don't know that it,
then you want to cross 4 out all.
I just put NA because I thought, well, it's not applicable, but that
No,
was
that's
just
fine,
my
if you,
first
if you
reading
want
of
to
it.
basically take this out of the discussion, that seems to be perfectly
I
reasonable.
mean, that was my first reading of it.
How do you feel?
I don't
After
want-
Walter read that, I thought.
Again, I don't want to, because I think we're going to be in litigation, and I'd like to back the record to know that Lyme does in fact have planned development, I have no in them. And so I'd like the record to show that we do have.
Yours
Right,
was-
but it's not what they're asking for.
I understand.
Oh, okay.
I'm talking about the next piece of litigation that follows,
The next step,
next step.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the words, so where would we say,
We simply say that planned developments are not permitted in the rural zone, they are permitted in the common, the Lyme Common and the commercial districts.
but that's not what they're asking for?
Nope.
Parentheses.
No, but the
And
key word, the
parentheses.
key word is, I mean, I'll change the word condominium to co-housing.
Thank you.
But the proposed project, a co-housing development, resembles a planned development. Nothing wrong with that.
Yep,
Yeah, that's true.
It's not what they're asking for, but it resembles. But
it's a
I-
true statement.
Yeah.
A planned development.
Yeah. And the only reason we are including restaurants is because of the common food
Exactly.
area.
You want to take that out? Is that
Take it
right?
out.
I take it out.
My problem with the whole co-housing thing is I think it's a confusing element, because it's putting a nice cloak over something that is a corporation that wishes to build a bunch of buildings and sell them to people.
Sounds like condominium.
That's why I use the word condominium development.
That's
Yeah,
not what they
but
asked
that's
for.
not what they asked for.
You go back to Ralph.
But you see, by bringing,
I see.
you can't do a condominium in the rural zone, and you can't technically do co-housing in the rural zone either.
Right.
What I'm scared of is by venturing into the co-housing thing is, who else are we allowing to start wanting to build in the rural zone if this ever got approved? And that's what I think we have to think in terms of, because it's been brought up a number of times, that this is a door. And what sort of door do you want to create? Because you're creating a door by defining
I
this
mean,
thing.
either it fits the criteria or it doesn't fit the criteria. If it's a door, it's a door. If it's not a door, it's not a door. I can't worry about what the next person might do.
Okay,
I mean, I understand that there is a precedent in whatever we do, but I would think we would vote this on its own merits.
And the form of ownership is not, I don't think it's
I
relevant,
don't-
condominium or not. It is no, I mean, the variance, I understand what they're asking, but the variance is from the number of units, the variance is the density, the variance are what they're asking for variance. Because legally, I don't believe this town can discriminate against form of ownership. If Lockline right now wanted to go ahead and condominiumize every one of those individual buildings, subject to planning board or site plan, I don't believe there's a chance in hell that the state would support the inability to do that from an ownership point of view.
no, I think you're right.
So I think we want to, that's a separate issue.
We've never asked for their condo docs, have we?
No, we asked for some
We
information.
inquired about some issues.
That was premature, if I remember the answer right.
Guess so?
Do we actually know if this is gonna be a condominium development?
Their last documents said it likely be a condominium, yes.
Likely.
No, I don't think it was likely.
What,
Well,
definitive?
I think so. The package we got today said something about it. Liz Ryan's memo said something about it.
Page 2, isn't it? Yeah, section 2.
He must have read it through.
But I think
I
that
did.
It does say that.
it's not the family. we're dealing with
I
multi-unit.
have specifically asked on a couple of questions what the structure will be, and the answer I was given was condominium.
That's my understanding, is that the Pinnacle Project LCC,
It's under legal
Another
organization.
clarification, does it matter? It's a question. Bill, is the ownership matter?
Probably not particular, I just,
No, I
it keeps
know.
coming up every time we seem to.
As we try to come with a word, I
Yeah, we
understand.
keep saying co-housing, well, no, it's not really
I
co.
understand.
So you added your.
I did, but I
Good.
don't have enough to
Okay.
do it.
All right,
Well, I
so
did,
it's
but I
in
didn't
the
get the
middle
words.
of,
Just keep
Liz
looking for
Ryan's,
it.
it says here that our co-housing neighborhood will be structured as a condominium.
Right.
Yeah.
because I think you're right, Walter, that fundamentally what's being asked for is X, Y, and Z.
But X is, yeah, X, Y, and Z.
So fundamentally then, do we even want something about planned unit development and co-housing in here?
I liked his explanation.
Yeah.
Just leave it in.
Leave it in.
It's a
Okay.
fact.
Yeah,
So
it's the way they
we can make
present
sure
it.
that David gets your wording of that. Okay, so my point 5 was agricultural soils conservation district provision. And again, as we get, this may be down one level.
Sorry, I just had a thought. Under plans, development, the proposed project, a co-housing development, resembles a planned development but lacks the commercial component under the planned development definition. And we knocked out a sentence or two, and then you added a sentence, right?
Yep.
So is this a good place to state as a finding that the fact that it's a co-housing thing, it resembles a planned development, and planned developments aren't permitted in the rural district, however, they are permitted in other places. The co-housing development is not mentioned, not defined, mentioned, permitted in table 4.1.
Is
Neither,
that-
and neither is it,
Not included as permitted use in the table point
Yeah.
not included as a permitted use. Yeah, so it's a good place to reference the fact that
Right.
it resembles a planned development, but it's different. And also, co-housing developments are not permitted in the rural district.
Nor is a condominium development.
Well,
Yeah.
we're not talking condominium
Okay.
anymore.
Okay.
That apparently doesn't come up,
All right.
because we don't know about that except in the letter.
Okay.
Two would we say are not defined in the ordinance and that's
Not permitted.
Not permitted.
And that's not permitted.
Co-housing units or co-housing development is not permitted. Is not a permitted use, is not listed as a permitted use. in
It's
table
not
It's not
listed.
listed as.
It's not
That's a
listed-
better way,
It's
yeah.
not listed as.
Anywhere in the ordinance.
Period.
And I think what you're saying parenthetically is that it's irrelevant in the middle paragraph of Liz's first page, that the co-housing neighborhood will be structured as a condominium. That's not a relevant fact
Right.
in section 4 or elsewhere.
And probably not relevant for.
For the variance.
I'm looking for clarity
Yeah,
on that.
okay, that's right.
Think it has to be added, or just,
I think it would only again because it's a baffling issue. If this goes in front of a judge, and the judge says, well, just because you don't allow co-housing doesn't mean it's
Doesn't
bad. or-
exist.
No, we're not saying that.
So we gotta, because we don't define it, if the applicant has subsequently defined it in some way, then I don't know if that's helpful in our deliberations or not, but we
It
get
might be
confused
helpful.
between the form of ownership and the way the buildings are aggregated on the site.
Which is the core of the business, actually.
Right, no question about it, but so, I don't wanna get confused between co-housing, which means nothing in our ordinance, The applicant's saying co-housing will be a condominium, which again means nothing in our
Yeah,
ordinance.
Right.
But we have to cover that, I think, to Rob's point, we have to cover that language in our findings, and so that doesn't become, we didn't. we failed to address
Ignore
it.
the application.
We failed to address it somewhere,
Exactly. Yeah.
so.
So point 4 is a valid, as now modified several times, is valid.
Yeah.
Okay. You content, sir?
Good.
3.5.
Point 5, agricultural soils conservation district provisions. Section 4.64B applies to this application. It requires that the use of agricultural soils be calculated based on 25% of the parent lot, i.e. original lot area, of any lot that's been subdivided in the last 10 years. Now,
That's right.
going along with that, I did request from Brian a calculation on that. We have that as part of your materials. But the thing that they are asking for, because they have said very clearly, this is not a lot size averaging request.
Correct.
What they want to do is to take and create one large lot, and then take the maximum area that the aggregate of all that volume would allow them to build on, to create larger structures than would be permitted under the ordinance. I hope I've not misrepresented anyone there, but,
Or structures that would be permitted. I don't think, at this point, for the purposes of what you're talking about right now,
Mhm.
that the number of structures or the number of units within them are an
no, it's
issue.
footprint,
Its footprint,
Right.
clearly.
yeah.
So,
And Brian, among the data you were given today, there's a calculation from Brian relating to that. The question is that a secondary consideration right now that could be deferred to later in the list?
It's relevant to the special exception issue, and I thought we decided we're gonna talk on
Exactly
variance,
right.
variance
So-
issues
let's get
first.
the
Right.
variance.
So
It's
let's-
not relevant to the
do-
first one, what
D,
Walter brought up.
defer to special exceptions.
Yes.
Okay. History of applications relevant to this project application. March 2008, 20010. Proposal to redraw the boundaries of Lyme Common District 1 mile north to include Loch Lyme Lodge. Withdrawn due to gross floor area limitation in the Lyme Common District, so it never went before the town. 210 to 11, open space community development was withdrawn due to faulty language. And 2013, conservation neighborhoods came to a vote of the town and was opposed by the planning board and was voted down 280 to 174 at town meeting.
Correct. Whether that's,
Okay, and that's historical, relevant to the variance that's being requested?
It's relevant to the way we weigh the way the town responds to requests for use of land in the rural zone.
and at this point, we have one demonstration of the town's response.
That's
to-
correct, sir. The other two were
The other
never,
two were never got to.
never got to it.
Right.
Do you have a copy of the proposed amendment
It was
It's
defeated.
in our tabs.
attached in here?
Yes, it's in there
It-
somewhere.
It's in
Good.
this
Thank
thing.
In what thing?
Book number
It
7.
was given to us,
Tab
So it's
11.
not in our stuff, it's in,
It's in their tabs.
their towns.
Yeah.
what's that?
11, right,
Okay, thanks.
Oh, you said 11?
11.
He said 11.
Thank you.
Now,
Take a break.
then my point 7 was testimony in Ray, section 4.46. I referred to this earlier. saying David Roby, a longtime member of the planning board, testified that the intent of the conversion option was to allow existing large houses to be converted into up to 4 apartments so that these houses could be repurposed in areas like the Lyme Common Zone. He noted that the conversion provision was not intended to be used to modify newly built structure that was designed to be converted so as to get around zoning regulations. However, we have noted that the language as such does not create an exclusion of any sort.
Right.
So the intent is historical data, but that's all it is.
The only thing is you might want to make a reference to the fact that 446 was subsequently amended to allow conversion up to 6 units.
Right.
Yeah. It may have been, was it subsequently amended, or has it
I
been
think
that way the whole
it's
time?
amended. No, it's been amended.
And the 5 units at 85 was prior
I
to
don't
zoning?
recall. How about we just say it's been amended to 6, because it has. Yeah.
Okay.
It now reads 6, yes, right.
Do we have any idea when
When
it was amended?
No.
Was amended to
Yeah.
No,
to allow up to 6 units.
conversion up to 6.
Yeah.
Okay. 8. Data in Ray, section 511D, lot size averaging. Response from Attorney Hunts for the Pinnacle Project. We're not utilizing lot size averaging per se, except to show the potential for a clustered single-family development under the existing ordinance.
Is that particularly pertinent to what we're doing?
Well, because it gives us, you see, then all their calculations and assumptions are based on a single large lot, a super lot.
True, but those calculations.
And maybe more special exception.
You're right.
Because they weren't asking, we removed the lot averaging at the moment.
Right.
For this, what's on the table does not.
Lot does not refer to lot
So I
average.
think this goes
This is
next, it
special
gets the
exception.
first.
It's either special exception or another variance later on.
Yeah, it's the next one. So that's it.
Either way.
Or
It's
next
the first.
variance.
Yeah, exactly.
And I suspect it's the latter. Subdivision of the property. The 110-acre parent lot was subdivided into 2 lots in January 2015. The 98-acre lot is the subject of the Pinnacle Project application, and a 12-acre plus or minus lot for a lot line large operation.
That's legitimate.
It's just a simple structure of
Yeah.
that. And again, this goes back to our earlier point, structure of the proposed project. Pinnacle Project is a for-profit condominium development with limited workforce housing, 4 units. The project is planned to be constructed in phases. We could either keep that or strike it.
It's a for-profit development, huh? Again, ownership, you have the letter, I guess, I defer, I don't think it matters, the formal ownership.
You know, it doesn't, I mean,
Doesn't
we
matter.
have the testimony, it's a condominium.
Yeah.
The applicant can leave it away.
But I don't,
Okay. Co-housing, the project reorganizes the co-housing community. Participation in the project requires that participants join the Pinnacle Project and that they be willing to share in collaborative tasks such as communal cooking.
without the condo doc, I didn't know what any of this means.
Without the-
I think you would say
Yeah.
organized, or is planned to be, or has been presented to be
Or do you want to
as
just cut it out?
co-housing community, but I don't think you can say that necessarily some wheelchair or whatever else, someone else is gonna be required to participate in cooking. I think you wanna,
It's in their literature.
it's not in their application.
That's true. Okay, do you want to just knock that out?
Yeah.
I don't see it's gymnasium.
Fine. And 12, co-housing food
That
service.
would be similar.
Yeah. Project finances, again, we have a pro forma now, but the applicant has stated the total project will cost approximately 13.5 million. First phase will cost about 9 million. Average cost of units, per units of the first phase would be approximately $450,000, with a total project per unit cost of $375. I'm suspicious of those numbers, because I don't think I've done the math on that properly.
I will confess that those are numbers I derived by simply dividing the
Yeah.
total cost by the number of units.
Okay.
But they didn't present it as that. They
No,
gave
and
us the totals.
so I would
They gave us the
ask,
totals.
is it relevant to the request for the variance?
No,
I don't think so.
Bill,
either.
what's your thought?
How many units?
The first phase,
37, well,
the
total.
first phase of 9 was by 16.
it's an 11 unit and either a 5 or a 7.
But
But what was the 5 is an independent
That's
building.
the total
It doesn't
cost
make sense.
is 13 and a half.
Yeah,
Oh, I see, now you want to just do 9 million,
but I still ask the question.
Yeah, I mean, my problem is that if you're building, you know, from an architectural standpoint, if you're building the common building
62.
and the 11 unit building,
Oh, but
and
you
the
have
other
the
one,
common
you're not gonna
facility.
go
Yeah, you have
build
a common
something out there
building,
and leave
that's
it
not
hanging out
units.
in midair.
Is it relevant?
No, you're right.
It's not relevant.
Well, it's only, I mean, some numbers are relevant because we've had the applicant that said they're gonna have workforce housing,
Yeah,
so.
and they've also
But those
stated,
get stated what they're gonna be, and they're being subsidized, also stated in testimony, by sales prices of other units, which is why they're phasing it. Is the overall project or the breaking relevant to the variance request? Not to me,
I
I
mean,
would vote, but
if this number was so specious as to be, you know, it came out to 10,000 a unit or something.
Yeah, yeah.
you know, we'd have to wonder then.
They've given us subsequent numbers which change those numbers. So-
yes, they certainly do, that's
Yeah.
why I was,
So C revision, C pro forma.
So are you taking out the average cost, or are you taking out the whole thing?
what do you wanna do?
Is it pertinent to the variance?
I think it's pertinent to public interest issue, frankly, but that's.
Okay, all right. In that, if,
Is the project viable?
that's what I thought you were gonna say,
Yeah.
and how would we
how do we
define
determine?
whether it's viable with those numbers or that set of numbers or those?
It may be that we can't determine,
Yeah,
one way or
that's
another,
kind of
whether
what I
it's
think, yeah.
and that's,
The issue is that we have to
That's
find,
relevant.
yeah, it's relevant because in order to create a variance, you have to find as a fact certain conditions.
Right.
And if this can't be determined, then we can't even consider it part of the public interest issue. I think.
Yes.
So it's needed for feasibility for the public interest as well.
That's
that would be,
his
that's
argument,
my, that'd be my
yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
So you're gonna correct it based on what they should do.
To strike the two average
Okay.
costs.
Yeah, I think the issue is, if the project crashes after 5 or 8 years, what happens to that place?
Yeah,
Right.
right.
And what impact does that have on the town?
That's my concern, yeah, exactly.
Or 20 years, I mean, what?
Yeah,
Or 50.
you're not gonna care in 50 years, sir.
You're absolutely right. It's down low.
Somebody.
I mean,
Okay,
So what is the-
Oh, yeah.
we basically said,
We're looking at
stated
the new figures.
new figures.
See new figures
Yeah.
and maybe consequences.
Are we qualified to judge whether this is feasible or not, based on the new submittal?
No, I'm not sure we are, but I think the applicant has the burden of showing it is.
I tend to agree.
How?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm missing that, you know, so,
Then American Curve.
right, if these units were to cost $450 each, and then we need a market study to show absorption, and then we need cash flow projection, and we're asking to do an awful lot of homework on our side, once we get an awful lot of additional information. And then we're gonna need an expert to look at this and say, yeah, you guys get the right information, and
Or no, you ain't.
yes or no.
Yes.
I mean, Do we wanna do
I'm
that
just
or
trying to get
not?
it as part of our record, that's all. I'm just trying to have it as part of our record.
Right, but what do, how do we
What do we
look
do
at
with it?
these numbers, whatever they are?
We
in terms
may
of
not
what's-
be, we may not be the ones dealing with it.
Well, we need to deal with them.
First, in any
First,
case.
and say, yeah, this is, we think this is feasible, or we don't think
No,
this
we
is
don't.
feasible.
No.
No,
All we have to do is say, this is the information we were given, and we couldn't judge whether it was feasible or not.
I agree with you, Walter.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
I agree.
But
with
make
you.
it part of the record.
Make it, yeah,
Yeah,
we read this
okay.
into the record so that
All
fundamentally,
right.
we go back to 14 and say, 13, basically applicant has stated the total project will cost approximately 14 point, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of numbers there that don't have much reality. 14.2 million, I mean, just, or 1.68 comma something. That, for the first phase would be, what is the number for the
We
first?
just attach that.
Just attach
You
it,
attach
as
that
provided,
sheet.
a pro forma financial
Provided.
statement,
Yes,
On
I think
the-
we don't want
yeah,
to
yeah.
hear any.
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's, okay. Now, this is the one where I think we really gotta get this clarified, or do we? Construction is stated to include 1 11-unit structure, 1 7-unit structure, 2 5-unit structures, 2 4-unit structures, and a common house, that's all correct. And the common house connected via walkways to the 7 and 11-unit structures. The connected structures are designed to allow wheelchair access to the common house, which would house a common dining area and other common use facilities. So,
That's an accurate statement of their testimony.
Dr. Davidson.
Yes, true.
but that does imply to me, it goes to a question they asked, is this to be considered a unitary structure? And the moment you have walkways suitable for wheelchair access, to my mind, this creates a unitary structure.
Those
But
are
that's-
issues we decide later.
Yeah.
This is testimony.
This is
Yeah,
just
that's-
That's right.
Finding of fact.
That's fine, thank you, yes, agreed. Okay, so that's acceptable. Occupancy, there would be a total of
One-
84 bedrooms, sorry, Alan.
I'm sorry, there is one issue that maybe we should look at, and that is, when you look at the plans, there are multiple carports. Are they something that also needs to be considered in proposed structures?
Structure.
Their structure, and Brian has very carefully given us a table
Okay, all
that
right.
includes the coverage of those structures. He did that
Just recently?
just
yes.
recently.
Yeah,
But
right.
we do have those data for us, yes.
But should that be mentioned in?
I would add them,
Yeah, okay.
That's
add 17, carport, or 5 or 9, or whatever the number is.
Yeah, add
right. And
the blank.
carports.
There are
Carports,
also one, I'm not sure how many carports, 1, 2, 3, 4 garages,
Yes,
and the carports, I believe, some of them are parking areas and some are carports.
yeah, parking areas aren't orange.
Right, so the carports, there's 1, 2, 3, but Brian does have those data provided for us.
Okay.
So,
it's
but they're also,
carports and garage.
Carports and garages
In addition
should
to-
be looked at. It's possible to have 3 carports in a single structure.
Yeah,
It's possible to have a garage, as I
That's what it
recall, there
looks
may
like.
be some garages within the structure.
that is
I would-
correct.
I
So
think there's some
if-
under,
So
Yes, there's
we
some
should
under parking.
differentiate between the structures that are already identified
yeah,
and those that represent
new.
extra,
other
extra
stuff.
buildings, yeah, right. I agree.
And there's probably some other little bits and
In
pieces.
addition to,
Bridges,
To-
stairwells.
Additional structures that are carports.
there are also additional structures that are carports,
Or garage.
garages, in addition to under building parking in some areas,
Right.
That's what I
and
had
various
to say.
patios and staircases.
Right.
Should that, David, do you have, technically you can't answer that.
You can nod.
You with your ears.
Oh, we can look at the drawings and
Yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Occupancy, there would be a total of 84 bedrooms in the project with a projected population of 59 adults between 9 and 12 students in the Lyme school. That's from their,
History. Presentation.
yeah.
72, and then there's 12 other people. Oh, I see, just bedrooms, it's not 84 people.
Yeah, 84 bedrooms, yeah.
You get one bedroom for each person. Get one bedroom for each person. That's 4 left over.
That's from
Plenty of
your,
bedrooms.
Well, you're not counting the kids under school age. That's not mentioned.
so that's historical?
That's a
Yeah.
projection.
Construction phases. The project is to be constructed in phases. Phase 1 would construct the common structure and the 7-unit and 11-unit
That's
structure.
where you, okay.
And that's the question, because here they're saying,
5 and
phase,
11.
but they're saying in phase 1, there would be 24 units in this pro forma.
Oh, it's 7 and 11 is 24.
But in the tab, they talked
Thank
about.
you. I'm
Yeah.
badly
Walter, you're
dyslexic,
really
Walter,
quick.
and you're playing with
This
my
is
mind. But so,
Straight addition.
but no, so that this is a different number than the number I derived.
We can clarify that
And so we need to clarify that out of,
as phasing.
clarify phasing.
Yep.
Yep.
And are we going to do that this evening or the next meeting?
Okay, that's a very good question. At this
Are
point,
we done with 16?
yeah, just clarify phasing.
All right.
And how, and this goes on to 35 bullet points.
Yeah.
We've done half.
Not quite.
Why don't we do a couple more?
And get at least that done.
Okay.
Okay, and then we will try and schedule another meeting.
Yeah.
And then everyone can go back and be digested by all this material.
Yes,
That
we will
way.
be.
Be digested by it or digest?
Digested by it, it's gonna get us.
Yeah, I
Before
think
we,
so.
Maybe before we adjourn, do we want to leave the applicant with any additional instructions?
We probably do. But
Some
why don't we-
clarifications we brought up.
Why don't we do a couple more and then get that list
I
together?
really was asking more for a matter of, did we intend to provide with anything? Have we gotten anything so far?
We'll clarify, for example, clarify the construction phase.
That's one, and then
That's
there may
one.
be others.
And if they can provide us with anticipated cost data per unit,
Yeah.
that would be good. So 2 points there. Okay, workforce statement. The applicant has submitted a statement of intent to build workforce housing as part of the application package. Construction of workforce housing would be in phases, with 2 units in phase 1 and an additional unit in each of phases 2 and 3. But you see, they're now showing the thing as
Yeah,
being
phase
2 phases. So we need to clarify the phasing.
3 phases as opposed to 4
Well, we see, now they're showing 2 phases in this
in the
pro forma. So I don't know which,
Boy.
We get clarification.
And I thought the pad was, had,
There's 3 in there.
there's
3 in there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay,
18.
workforce housing analysis. In 2014, the Lyme Planning Board developed a workforce housing inventory report. The analysis states that the workforce ownership threshold of 240, threshold is 244,000 for purchase, or $940 a month, including utilities for rental. Lyme was found to have approximately 24% of its housing stock with a valuation that would put it in the workforce housing category. That's just a statement of facts from the
Okay.
Planning Board's workforce housing analysis.
Yes.
And the other question here, again, this is relevant to special exceptions more than anything else, 19, driveway versus private road. Lot lines, cabins, and hospitality business will share a curb cut with the proposed project. Applicant has stated that, quote, this is Bobby, "We believe that the drive serving the co-housing units qualifies as a driveway under the Lyme zoning ordinance as it connects the buildings to the main road and does not serve more than one lot."
The definition of driveway is, it only serves
One
two
lot.
lots.
Up to 2 lots.
Up to
And this
two
would
lots.
be two.
But that is with the presumption that there is only one structure on each lot.
That is correct. That's why this is,
And then we're dealing with X number of structures.
So
Yeah.
would this
And-
not fall into the
this strikes me as, but I think it might require variance.
But it's not this variance
No,
that
No.
we have the motion on right now.
You're right. It's
So
gonna have to
next.
be a private road
I think it has to be a private road.
and has to be built to those standards then. And gets included in coverage and all of that goes around too.
I agree. But that's more, we are in deliberation, so we can say that.
Yeah.
Well, no well location shown on the plans, well would most likely require a special exception.
Do you think?
Yeah, because it's probably almost by definition has to cover cross conservation lands for the pipeline to get it
To dig it
to the
right.
building.
Again, so that's later.
That would be a special exception, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Or-
That's what it said.
That's what it
Or
said.
it's
What it
not,
said.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
That is a special exception. And then septic system, the project would be served by a community septic system with a force main approximately 750 feet leading to a remote leaching field at the top of the steep slopes area of the site.
Which has been staked.
Oh, not
That's
top.
been
It
staked.
has been
correct?
staked, walked by the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
But not yet approved.
Have we got
By
the
the
report?
state.
No, there's no state approval. It's a conceptual plan. And it does require some interesting gymnastics to do it, but Brian has said that he thinks that that's technically quite feasible from his standpoint as an engineer.
Driveway.
Total length of the proposed driveway is approximately 1,375 feet to the parking area, which again makes it it has to be private road.
Right.
Areas of construction structures, Brian has provided us with a detailed list of structural areas, which is in your documentation. And then site conservation district areas. Total conservation district area is greater than the lot area due to overlap of conservation districts, but Brian has provided the data that's in the table you see there.
Shall we stop there, because it's now 9:30,
Yes, yep,
and we have a few other things to deal with,
yes.
including something for you to take to Thursday night's meeting from me.
Oh, thank you, Conrad.
It's not much, but
No, but thank you. You will be elsewhere.
I'll be in Pennsylvania, thank you very much. I may just be getting into the
Okay.
hotel, but.
Okay, so at this point, is there any need for deliberation? We need to agree on what we're asking the applicant to provide us. I mean, I think the first thing we say is, we have made and voted on a motion based on what Walter read. Does the
Right.
applicant agree that those are what are being asked for?
I would agree with
That's
that.
number one.
That's number one.
That's number one.
And then 2 is phasing.
Phasing, and 3 would be, to the degree possible, an outline of projected unit costs,
Which fits in with the phasing.
which fits in with the phasing and the pro forma.
And 4 would be a list of the structures.
Oh, yeah, so we know.
We have that, actually. Yeah.
Is it on something?
Yes,
And
it
And
is,
it's
actually.
accurate? Or do I have to guess at which structures are 1 or 2 structures?
Why don't we look through here and,
Or we could just ask for it, it's easy enough for them to do it.
Yeah, they.
Brian will have it,
Okay, yeah.
at this point, probably is intimate with it.
I would say Brian's probably, but, here,
What's that?
I think that's what you're asking for.
So garage A, is that inside a structure or not? Or do I have to look it up on the drawing?
Building B carport connected to any other carport?
Building B carport goes directly.
I'd say we ask him for a list of all the structures.
Separate structures.
Anything that's a structure, which means it's not connected
To
to
something
another
else.
structure, should be identified for us.
Right.
I don't feel like working all the way through that stuff.
No, I don't like.
Okay, so
Because we can't
fundamentally,
get
we
that
want
wrong.
him
Well,
to
you want to be in
modify,
Pennsylvania right now.
we want
You
him,
gotta stay there.
we want him to modify his already produced lot coverage,
To clarify the
What is
number of structures.
the number of
Separate
structures,
structures.
number of separate structures,
Right.
and what is attached to what, and if necessary, to relabel some on the plan.
But it's
And
not,
in some cases, those
I
carports
don't
may
think the
not be
plan-
included
no.
in the.
Frank, the
He's
plan,
done that,
Frank,
Okay.
I
yeah,
don't think the plan matters.
Okay.
We're not doing it. We haven't even do the plan.
okay, no. Fine. All right, David, have you got those notes, and then the reasonable controls?
Reasonable control.
Thank you, sir.
Close.
All right, any other points for the applicant? If so, if not,
Move to go on to deliberation.
I second
all in favor?
it. Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're now out of deliberation and have made fair progress on some findings. The question is now, when do we schedule our next hearing? And don't everybody run forward with too much pleasure.
Thanksgiving.
That works for me.
Let's,
Thursday, Thanksgiving Day.
I'll probably be in Ulaanbaatar at that point.
next, I'm not going next week.
You will be gone next week, I will too, much of this party. Out of Mongolia.
It's a good place for it, Frank.
There's a major Chinese research project being started there.
It's good. Your Mandarin's good.
My Mandarin sucks. Actually, it isn't even that good.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm available June 3 and 4.
Yeah.
And any time the week after that,
June 3 is a
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Frank, David, do you have the schedule? So we
Yeah,
know
I think we'll grab the,
we know we can exist,
We're good.
exist here.
Except for the zoning board meeting on Thursday, the 18th, and put any time after that too.
Rob, on the 18th, sir.
I'm okay in June in general.
Right, that's good.
I'm the only Neanderthal that doesn't have a calendar.
That's okay, I'm not working on it very well.
I'll be on vacation that day. but-
No, no, my calendar, I don't
So
have.
don't-
I'll be away that day. but
Wait.
On vacation, the
Wait.
18th.
Rob?
But
Right.
That's our next schedule.
That's
Yeah,
a
the
regular
problem
one.
is, I'll be in Iceland.
I know, so,
I'll be in Iceland at that point, so that, but we have two alternates if they can make it.
I'm thinking of Guam.
I wouldn't want to do this during a regular schedule.
Oh, good gosh,
No,
no, I'm thinking Wednesday, the,
7th,
how about Wednesday, the,
3rd, 10th,
Third.
You're gone
17th.
that week, Bill, or you?
no, I'll be gone that week and the next week.
And
But
then-
but the 3rd, I have another commitment on that evening.
What are you doing on the 8th through the 12th?
I'm okay in the evening on the 8th. Friday the 12th? No.
I'll
Friday
be
is
in-
the 12th.
I'll be in
No, I'm not
Iceland.
doing a meeting on the 12th.
No, I'll be in Iceland.
I wouldn't miss it.
So what happened to the 4th with that?
What's wrong with the fourth?
I've got another commitment. The 3rd, I've got a,
Third and fourth?
sorry,
Second?
That's okay.
you know, you got my dance
What are you
calendar.
doing about the second?
Second looks good.
The second?
Yep.
That's
Tuesday the
right.
second?
We have a road meeting, we stay on, right?
Yeah, I can get back in
you
time.
do have a road meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're out of here by then.
Yeah, yeah.
Is the second work?
Yeah, the second's fine.
Does that work for? you?
Second
See if
works,
that works for
second
you?
works,
Okay.
yeah.
What, 7:30?
Does the second work for applicants?
If we don't need Brian,
I don't think we do, Brian, if Brian
Well,
can
he's
provide the
helpful.
data. It's
I
helpful.
know that, I can call him.
Yeah, I would like to publicly say Brian has been extremely helpful to the board in providing accurate and timely information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Definitely.
And second it is.
Second it is. Okay.
7:30?
Yeah.
Tuesday. All right.
Everyone gets a clarification.
I just moved tonight's
And,
meeting
yeah.
to the second.
Yeah,
See what response.
Bobby and Brian, did you all get enough of what we were talking about as additional information? David will copy me and confirm that as soon as he gets a chance to. But
They wanna know, we wanna know if they concur with our characterization of the variance request,
You'll be able to catch it.
something about funding,
Phasing.
phasing, funding,
yeah, some structures.
and structure.
I thought there was one more.
Unit cost.
Sorry.
Right, unit cost is an element of the phasing.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
That's correct.
And a list of separate structures.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, Alan, you can give me your information after we adjourn technically.
Okay, let's do that.
Any comments? You want to
Any other comments?
And does anybody have any comments? Otherwise, we shall adjourn this meeting until the 2nd of June. We need a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn until the second of June.
Meeting to be continued. Do I hear a second? All in favor? Thank you all very much. All-
And back.